Hey, everybody, welcome to the Wednesday or Hump Day edition of Winners and Winers Radio. I'm your host, Scott Steehn with Winners and Winers, and I am the lead handicapper, and I'm joined by the senior handicapper over there at winnersandwiners.com. He is the one, the only, Long Island's finest. He is Scott Reichel. Scott, what's up, buddy?
Nothing much. Looking forward to seeing some actual competitive sports. Maybe for once, we'll see. The amount of games didn't really change, but we changed sports, so maybe this one will be more competitive than the last one.
So that's something, yeah. The home run derby was kind of competitive, at least in the first round.
That was 2 days ago.
Well, I know, but you're talking about we haven't had a week of competitive sports, basically.
I just meant solely yesterday. That was not a fun game to watch.
No, the MLB All-Star Game is often disappointing for entirely different reasons than the other All-Star games are disappointing, because the other All-Star games, nobody tries on defense. Nobody really gives a damn whether it's hockey or basketball, football. That's probably the worst All-Star game. But in baseball, it's a little bit different. It's boring because the pitching usually outpaces the hitting, and that's exactly what happened tonight. I thought we might get a few runs out there in Coors Field. The American League sort of obliged, putting up 5. National League did not oblige at all. Had a couple of opportunities, and were not able to capitalize, and that was pretty much the difference in that game. So, yeah, Scott, I'm looking forward to some competitive basketball because now you go right back into the finals, probably the most competitive NBA basketball we'll see all season long. So we'll be talking about that. And, of course, we are going to be joined in our NBA segment by Jonathan Von Tobel. He is the NBA master over at VSIN, the Vegas Sports and Information Network. If you're not a fan of VSIN, I highly recommend going over there and checking out their stuff. They've always got good things going on over there. And Jonathan Von Tobel, a.k.a. JVT, is one of the best. Good guy, came out of the Mountain West, was a sports writer there, and has turned himself into a really good NBA capper. So we'll be looking forward to talking to him. But before that, we've got other stuff to do, Scott, right?
Yep, something like that.
Something like that. Let's get to it, shall we? As we'll start it as we always do. We'll look at the people that maybe took it in the shorts a little bit today, Scott. I'm not going to lie to you. It's a very specialized list today. Would you say
tennis? That? A lot of tennis.
It's tennis, baby. That's what it's going to be. So if you're a tennis bettor, there's a good chance that you got your money a little bit stolen today. And what happens when they steal your money, Scott?
Call the cops.
Call the cops, baby. Here we go. All right, Scott, let's start it off, and I'll do these. As always, I'm not super familiar with all the tennis folks, so excuse my pronunciation in advance. So if you had, what is that, Sousa and Soundgarden? John Philip Sousa and Soundgarden? No, Sousa and Sandgren.
I purposefully gave you the only one involving an American.
If you had Sousa and Sandgren under 22.5 games, well, you were in pretty good shape. Sandgren won the first game 6-4, serving for the matchup 6-5. Looking really good, Scott. But, just like my heart so many times, the serve got broken. Won the second set in the tiebreaker, but that didn't matter because that was too many games for us, Scott. You had under 22.5. You missed it by a half as it landed on 23, but that's still a beat, and that's a bad one. It is time for you to call the cops.
And now switching over to women's tennis, if you had an early morning matchup on clay between Christian and Jurovic, you were in pretty good shape with Christian on the money line, up a break twice in the third set. But it is women's tennis, and it is on clay, so being up a break basically means absolutely nothing. And she returned the favor by getting broken herself twice and then lost the deciding set in a tiebreaker. So anytime you win the first set and you're also up 2 breaks in the third set and you lose in a breaker, that's even worse because you probably wasted 2+ hours of your time. That's awful.
How do you think the people feel that bet on her? At least she gets paid. People that bet on that got nothing.
I'm imagining people waking up, some degenerate somewhere who needed it, and they're waking up at 7 a.m. trying to watch some clay court tennis in some European country, and they're just sweating it out, and they feel like they got it in the bag, and they don't.
Yeah. And then they had a little breakfast, drank some coffee, and headed to a meeting.
Maybe a little bourbon in the breakfast, but yes.
Perhaps. Scott, we'll finish it off with, it's going to be tennis again. Congratulations. If you had Sasnovich minus 4.5 games over Babos. Oh, look at that. You were in fantastic shape, was leading 6-zip, 2-zip before. Oh, and this is the one I hate about tennis, Scott. Hate it. Before Babos retired due to injury. That's no bet, my friend. And you know the pain that only overbetters when it gets rained out in the 7th inning can feel, Scott, because that is the absolute worst steal right there. Sasnovich was beating him so bad, it made him quit. That doesn't matter, though. They don't pay any spread bets. If you had Sasnovich minus 4.5, you might as well have him minus 6.5, minus 9. Didn't matter because you got your bet voided. It's time for you to call the cops.
Oh, might as well had her minus 4.5. But it's even worse because tennis has the money line bet count if it goes through one set in some books. But in any book, I guarantee you the spread bet did not count. So if you had the money line there, you probably won. But if you had the spread, then you get a refund, even though the other person didn't even win a game.
So if you had Babos plus 4.5, you had to feel really good about that.
You pulled off a miracle. You got a miracle refund.
You had the only push you could possibly get in that situation. All right, Scott. Well, let's finish it up. Let's no more tennis. Let us never speak of this again.
It was obscure, but when you only have one game that most people are paying attention to, or maybe 1.5, you got to dig deep sometimes for some bad beats.
You know, people tune into this show and they go, "I want to hear the 3 call the cops. I want to feel better about myself because I didn't have any of those bets." And today was a great opportunity because there's a good chance almost all of our listeners had none of those bets.
But I think we can agree all 3 of those were pretty bad, though.
They were. As far as tennis goes, yes, those were very bad beats, especially the last one. So, Scott, the opposite of the bad beats, the opposite of the call the cops. These are the easy wins. Everything went exactly as planned. No heroics and no retiring in the middle of the second set. None of that. These are the nice, easy victories. You were sitting in the rocking chair.
So the first one was actually one I was on the wrong side of. If you had no score first inning, you had a nice easy winner. A lot of money came in on the yes on that one. I beat a pretty huge line move. That didn't matter. Nobody cares. Because the AL went down 1-2-3 and the NL went down 1-2-3. The, I'd say, easiest win of a no-run first inning you can possibly get because nobody got on base.
Scherzer and Ohtani were both very good there in the first inning.
I don't think anyone had a strikeout, though. I'm pretty sure everything was pretty well hit. They were just right at somebody.
In play, out, huh?
You knew that you had some bad luck there when you see Guerrero launch one up the middle and you realize that both teams are shifting in the All-Star game? You noticed that?
Yes.
What's that about?
God forbid we'd see some runs. We wouldn't want that.
It's an exhibition game. We got to make sure that we put the players, you know, I don't know, either embrace the exhibition or take it seriously.
Well, apparently they're taking it seriously, Scott, because they're shifting.
Yep, apparently.
Hey, Team USA, I hear good things about these guys, Scott. They are on fire. Fire. They played Argentina today. They were 19.5-point favorites. Never a doubt, Scott. They led by 16 points at halftime, ended up winning by 28. I don't know what all the panic and kerfuffle was about. This team looks good. I really like the cut of their jib indeed. Team USA minus 19.5. If you had them, you were in the rocking chair.
Definitely true. Argentina had nothing to offer. Can't even blame Argentina because Team USA, I guess, got tired of being made fun of.
Yeah.
But either way, looking at the third one, if you had the All-Star game and if you had the American League on the money line, I know you did. But if you had the American League in the money line, then, well, you were in pretty good shape because they ended up scoring first, scored second. They also scored third, and they scored fourth because they were up 4-0 going into the bottom of the fifth and ended up winning 5-2. Really never in doubt. National League threatened for a little while. Bryant left those 3 base runners stranded swinging on 3-0. He really had a ticket on the American League. And if you had the American League, never in doubt.
Yep, that was really the only question there when they had the bases loaded in the 8th with 2 outs. And Bryant was nice enough to help us out there. So very good. We did have that as a premium play. We had the American League plus 105. So that was a nice cash for all my subscribers today. I was happy about that because it's always, Scott, you have to decide when you have premium subscribers like that, if you're going to just go ahead and give out picks on like the Home Run Derby and the All-Star game, or if you're going to take those couple of days off because generally not, what people like to bet on. But I know most of the players out there, they're going to be watching the games. They're going to be watching the home run derby. They want to have a little action. So I found advantages in both of these games, and we were able to cash both tickets. So yeah, there you go. All right. Oh, Scott.
I had to do it. I had to add it. You got to rant about it yesterday. I got to rant about something today.
You're absolutely right, guys. It is time for our new favorite segment. This is who the group. This is the person, the team, the manager, the coach, whatever. Yesterday was a network. We took ESPN to school yesterday for their horrible coverage of the home run derby. Today, we're going to take somebody else to school, Scott. It is time for the donkey of the day. All right, that's enough.
Never gets old.
Never gets old.
Anyway, sticking with the general trend of baseball coverage, which we've done, I'd say for an all-time record on the show for the last 2-3 days because we didn't really have much of a choice. Either way, the donkey of the day is going to be the National League. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, you might think, well, it's an exhibition game. They lost. You can't win them all. That's definitely true, unless you're the American League, because you practically win them all. The National League has lost each of the last 8 All-Star games. And if you think that's bad, the last 24 All-Star games, the National League has won 3 times, lost 20, and tied once. Now, in an exhibition game that used to matter, but now it doesn't, they're run out of excuses because you have people's sons in the game instead of them. Vlad Jr.'s there now instead of Vlad Sr., and yet the National League still can't win. And I don't even know what you can do about it. What is it? What's going on here? I know it's an exhibition game, but you can't even, at some point you're going to accidentally win a game, aren't you?
You would think so. You get the bases loaded like that, and you run into a fastball, and you hit it over the fence, or you drive it to the wall for a double, something like that. And yeah, you got to think they would be able to get that one big hit, but you'd be wrong because they haven't been able to do it, Scott. Now
320-1. That is so ridiculously bad for what's basically a coin flip game odds-wise. National League was favored in this game, which is also pretty funny because they never win this game at all. But in a basic coin flip game, they are losing over 80% of the time. Isn't that something?
It is. So let's go a little deeper, Scott. Is there something to it? Is the National League worse than the American League?
I think you got to start feeling that way. It doesn't matter what ballpark they play in. They're playing in National League parks half the time. The American League still wins.
Yeah, that doesn't matter one bit.
Can't blame the pitchers batting because you had DHs on both sides, so that didn't matter.
Well, and when I was a kid, it was the National League had like a 10 or 11 game winning streak from I want to say about 1972 to about the early 80s.
It's a very weird streak where the American League dominated, then the National League did, and now the American League's dominating again. Right. I'm not sure why it's so streaky, but either way, the National League should fire the GM or something because they're right now 320-1.
Well, you see, when I was doing this pick, I wanted to go back and I wanted to see if it started when the DH started. I thought that might be a reasonable assumption that the American League was more used to playing with that extra batter and all that. But the first 10 seasons of the DH, the first 9 seasons of the DH, the National League won. So, yeah, I don't know. And I'm just kind of seeing, and it doesn't really match up as far as World Series champions go.
It doesn't make any sense.
No, because 7 of your last 11 World Series champions have been from the National League. So it's not like one league is superior to another. I don't know. It's a great question. It's a mystery. All we can do is keep riding the trend. That's it.
So even though we don't exactly know why, it's still donkey of the day because an entire league, for pure pride perspective, you have to win occasionally in this game that's basically a coin flip.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to make a better showing. The pitching was okay. You give up 5 runs in Colorado. There's really no shame in that. But the hitting is just absolutely dreadful, Scott. So
I'm also blaming MLB a little bit. Can we keep the balls out of the humidor for the actual game, please?
Yeah, I was worried when they said that balls were going back in the humidor. I still took, for my play of the day, Scott, I still took the over. And I still thought we'd get there. But
still the altitude. You had a decent amount of home runs. Just nobody was on base.
Right. Right. You had some solo shots, and you had wind blowing out. You had still warm. It was about 8 degrees colder than it was on a Tuesday night, or on Monday night rather, but still didn't matter. So
Just a question, by the way, randomly about the game. We're kind of done with Donkey of the Day as a segment, but are you a fan of them interviewing the players during the actual game? Because I don't think Joe Buck has anything interesting to say whenever he talks to the players. Can we get some decent questions?
yeah, you got to keep it pretty.
You have to keep it polite because you don't want to put them on the spot or anything, but I just felt like most of the conversation was a little too trivial for me.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I do. I do. It's a fine line, and I listened to a Joe Buck on one of my podcasts, and the Joe Buck interview, and he was talking about how he's just pretty much hated by everybody.
Do you like Joe Buck or no?
He's all right. When the Royals were in the World Series there 2 years in a row, there was a lot of chatter around Kansas City about how he hated the Royals and all this stuff. And I think these guys that play, I think he comes pretty close to playing it down the middle, because he said he's gotten complaints from every team that they're either favoring their team or they hate their team.
I like the baseball coverage for Buck. The football coverage is what I have a problem with, but that's a separate story.
He's not my favorite football guy. When Fox has the Super Bowl, I'm not thrilled with that year.
I'm sure people are waiting for Buck and Aikman to no longer be doing Cowboy games every single week on Fox Sports.
Get me started on Aikman. Couple too many shots.
Just saying the duo there is not exactly a power duo.
Yeah, and that's their number one team. That's their number one broadcast team, of course.
Can we get Gus Johnson doing some NFL games?
Ian Eagle, I don't care. I don't mind Ian Eagle.
I'm trying to remember if Eagle does CBS games though.
He does.
So that's a conflict of interest. But Gus Johnson does college games on Fox. Why can't you throw him over for some NFL games?
Yeah, I know. Kevin Harlan does CBS and TNT. So I don't know, buddy. I can't help you. I got nothing there with Joe Buck.
Didn't really mean to just sway that completely to Joe Buck, but I don't know. I just feel like the All-Star game, you're trying to throw in some fun quirks in there, talking to the players during, whatever. I just thought the questions themselves pretty much told you absolutely nothing about the actual personality of the athlete.
Yeah, I would agree. I would tend to agree with that. They're gonna send them softball questions. So that part, I don't really have as much beef up. Do you like the concept of interviewing players during the game? And does it matter if the game doesn't mean anything?
I think that's kind of the problem, though, is that I actually wouldn't interview the players one at a time. I'd get a couple of them having like a group conversation with each other.
Okay.
Just let them interact with each other a little bit more.
Okay. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
I'm more interested in hearing how the actual players communicate with each other than how an announcer is going to ask you a softball question. Of course, that's a little bit dangerous because if they forget they're being mic'd, then they might curse or something like that, but you can always block that out. I just think it's more interesting to hear the player dialogue instead of hearing the actual announcers interject every time.
Yeah, agreed. I totally agree. That'd be a lot more fun. I don't know why they just don't let us run things, Scott. We've established the world would be a lot better place if they just let us make all the decisions.
Just give me a distance tracker on the home run derby and we're good to go. Still can't get over that.
I don't even want to do it. I don't even want to go back to last night's rant. But yes,
I'm just saying.
If you missed that rant, it's still available on our YouTube channel. And we talked about ESPN and their dreadful coverage of the home run derby. So Scott, let's talk a little basketball here. Non-playoff related. Kawhi Leonard had surgery, partially torn ACL. He's going to be a free agent. How much does this hurt his chances on the free agent market? And do you think there could be a little mea culpa involved for all the people that gave him such a hard time on his subpar performance, and now that we know how serious the injury was?
Well, to answer the first question, he's not officially a free agent. He's technically able to opt out, which he probably will, because with the salary cap going up, he'll make a lot more money if he opts out. Now, as for the market, doesn't matter. I mean, if people are going to invest that much money in Durant off of a snapped Achilles or ruptured Achilles, I'm sure people will pay for Kawhi anyway. Maybe the length will be a little bit of an issue, where maybe you don't want to give him a 5-year deal. Maybe you want to give him maybe a 3-year deal with an option in there. So maybe lengthwise, that's an issue. But to answer the second point, I think that the Clippers did a pretty good job of hiding the severity of the injury for several weeks. I know that people are criticizing Kawhi for sitting up in the booth and not being by the actual bench, which I still think you can argue is still a gripe you can make with Kawhi because injured or not, he still should have been on the bench with his teammates instead of setting up in the skybox.
Yeah.
So that criticism doesn't change. But everything else, people kept thinking Durant was soft, and now we should not Durant. Sorry, that Leonard was soft and that he should have played and suited up for an elimination game, and then they eventually lost. That's a pretty bad injury. Any tear to any type of three-digit knee, letter acronym there in the knee, not good. And he's going to need surgery and should take a couple of months to rehab there. So I don't have an issue with Kawhi sitting out. I still have an issue with him not being on the bench with his teammates, but that's pretty much it. You?
Yeah, I'm about the same. I think that people were perhaps giving him a little too much of a hard time, but he could have helped himself out a little bit by coming down and sitting on the bench with his teammates. There's so many things that happen in sports with athletes these days that I don't really understand what the upside is when they know by them doing something they're going to get absolutely savaged in public, and yet they do it anyway. I don't really understand the mindset there. Can you give me a rational explanation about why he did that?
It's a simple explanation. He's Kawhi Leonard. He doesn't think about what anybody thinks about him. Just the way it is. But
Wow.
Kawhi,
Okay.
personality-wise, people can agree is introverted, and he is relatively awkward to the general public, which I think is kind of his charm at this point. But I think people would
Flat
agree
Earth.
that that's a fair way to describe him. Would you agree with that?
Isn't he the flat Earth guy, or is that Kyrie?
Kyrie's the flat Earth guy.
That's right. That's right. I can never remember which is which. So, yeah.
But the point is I think that even if you don't think of Kawhi as a leader because he's not a very talkative guy, he's still a veteran presence in the locker room, worst case scenario, even if he's not playing. He should still have been on the bench. That's all I'm going to say about it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm totally with you. I'm totally with you on that. So let me ask you, Scott. I know we talked about the All-Star game. I kind of want to circle back here real quick because there was one glaring thing in the All-Star game that we didn't talk about. You know what it is?
I have no idea where you're going with this one.
How about the uniforms?
Oh, I purposefully shielded my eyes from those. That was atrocious.
You're not a fan?
They were terrible. But then again, I'm so used to really bad All-Star game jerseys because the NBA has had some hideous jerseys for I don't even know how long up to this point.
You don't like Cream City?
How hard is it to find good jerseys?
Apparently pretty hard.
Very difficult.
Because they've got, teams and spending hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on these designs.
You need a new design team.
And this is when I see stuff like that, I always want to ask the question, what do the ones look like that you discarded?
Mm-hmm. Can I see the rejected copies?
Let me see your second and third place.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw those uniforms, it looked like, I'll tell you what it looked like, Scott. It looked like Cuban teams playing with the all blue like that.
Okay.
Did you see like the Cubans were wearing all blue or all red?
I was going to say it looked like one of the Florida Marlins jerseys, but that's basically the same idea.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I mean, I'm sure they'll sell a few of them, but to me, and we've talked about this a little bit on the show before, one of the great things about the All-Star game was seeing everybody wearing their own uniform.
I like seeing everyone in the row. It's not like other sports where you're going to confuse who's on what team.
Right.
So I agree with you. Keep them in the same usual jerseys that they wear, uniforms, and just have them play normally. I like that idea.
Stop fixing problems that don't exist. Spend your time fixing actual problems.
Worry more about adding a DH to the National League.
Worry more about umpires that can't call balls and strikes correctly. How long? What's the over-under, Scott, until we see robo-umps for home plate?
In Major League Baseball?
Yep, Major League Baseball.
I got to assume it's probably like 5 years down the road.
I was going to say the over-under. For me, I was at the over-under at 4.5 years.
I'll go over.
You take the over?
I think that you're just going to appeal to the tradition of keeping regular umpires, and that's a pretty radical change just to get rid of umpires entirely.
It is.
Plus, you still have a union, and you have to worry about dissolving
You're not getting rid of any umpires. There's still an umpire at home plate, and you still have your field umpires.
But wouldn't you agree, though, that some would be annoyed because how exactly would you determine who's going to get playoff games if there's no grading system?
Well, they're still going to grade, Scott. Nothing's going to change as
Yeah,
far
but
as
the home plate umpire is going to stand there.
I understand. So they're going to have one less thing to grade on, but they'll still grade on whether they rotated correctly, whether they're in position, that hustling, things like that. So I mean,
Still, I don't see that happening anytime soon. You?
I would say slightly over 4.5, unless there is a big egregious missed call in a huge game
Angel Hernandez.
that gets plenty of traction. Let's say it's bases loaded, 3-2 count, puts one right down Main Street. They call it ball 4.
Or if they miss a pass interference at the 1 yard line.
Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So if that doesn't happen, if there's no egregious thing in the playoffs or World Series, yeah, we can probably muddle along for 3 or 4 more years. It's coming.
I'm trying to remember. It's in the Atlantic League now, but it's not in AAA, correct?
Yes, it's in. Is it just the Atlantic League?
I
know
think it might be in 1 or 2 more.
I couldn't remember if it was like all of single A or if there was just certain leagues that are doing. I think there's just certain.
That's why I'm taking the over, because bare minimum, you're going to need at least 2-3 years of trial run in AA or AAA before you're ready to green light it professionally.
Well, in Manfred, I just said it didn't take them long to trot out the man on second in extra innings like they did in the minor leagues. But Manfred said that's going to go away, Scott. 7-inning doubleheaders are going away, and the ghost runner on second is going away.
I'll believe it when I see it.
I agree. Does that make you happy?
Of course. I think it's stupid, but I also understand where you're coming from on the other end, which was in the middle of a COVID season, which was last year, and you need to end games quicker because you're not going to have any days off. It's going to look hideous, but you got to get the games over sooner.
Right.
So it is what it is. I think it was a terrible experiment, but they had to try to do something in a very unpredictable situation. If there was no COVID, they wouldn't have had the runner on second base.
Yeah, agreed. That never would have happened.
Yeah, so they tried to make some adjustments in a pandemic. Whatever, it happens.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why we do it. I don't know why we did it this year.
That's the issue I have. But last year, you want to try something, whatever. This year, I think they should have got rid of it.
Yeah, agreed. So it looks like maybe next year that'll be it. So Scott, real quick, and we're going to talk about the British Open, by the way. Of course, you are listening to Winners and Winers Radio. Winners and Winers Radio, give us an hour. We'll give you the winners, and we're fitting to do that right now. Just one final thing before we move on from baseball, Scott. Manfred not thrilled with the Oakland Athletics and the Coliseum out there. And Vegas is starting to rub their hands together and thinking they might get the A's in Vegas. How do you feel about that?
You're telling me that a professional league thinks that they'll make more money moving to Vegas instead of staying in Oakland? Aren't you shocked? That blows my mind.
Horrible stadium there in Oakland, by the way.
They've been asking for renovations for years, and we talked about this, I believe, a couple months ago, right around when the season started.
Right.
We talked about how this might be on the horizon, and Oakland is probably just going to sue Vegas because Vegas is taking all their teams, man. It's not pretty. The Raiders, of course. Now you got Oakland potentially. Of course, Golden State's no longer playing in Oakland. So what does Oakland have anymore if the A's end up leaving?
Yeah,
it's not pretty.
They don't have the Seals anymore, do they?
I don't believe so.
Do you remember the Seals?
Vaguely.
The San Francisco Seals?
Yes.
Was that an actual hockey team?
But that was it was San Francisco Seals, but based in Oakland?
You got me. I don't know.
Okay. Because you mentioned Oakland, so that's why I was kind of curious. But the point is are you really surprised that a team that had a movie come out within the last 5-10 years about how cheap ownership is potentially losing its team to a big market?
Yeah,
no, I'm not surprised.
And they're going to take a vote and maybe do a non-binding thing to look at building a stadium downtown and yank. I don't know. I'll believe it when I see it.
Do you think they're going to Vegas? Because I do.
Yes, I think they're going to Vegas. So which happens first, robo-umps or A's to Vegas?
A's to Vegas.
A's to Vegas.
I got to assume that's going to be very high on Manfred's priority list.
This team likes to move around. Of course, they started off in Philadelphia, made a stop in Kansas City for a few years. Or moving on to Oakland, it seems only right that this team would keep on traveling.
Do you think that they would actually have a pretty solid fan base in Vegas? Because I know the Raiders do, but that's also football.
Yep.
Is baseball really going to travel well to a place that's usually around 110 degrees for the majority of the regular season?
Well, you got to build them a dome.
I got to assume you have to. You got to treat it like Arizona.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
have a choice.
Because it's 115 degrees, 118 degrees, literally sometimes there in the summer. You can't do anything in that.
I also don't really know what more the A's have to do to get money from Oakland. Your team's actually good. You're not really title contenders, but you're playing winning baseball. So if your attendance numbers are still bad, then there's really no easy solution besides see you later. It's not like this team's in the basement.
Yeah. Yep. And, Manfred's kind of shots fired there. He was quoted as saying Las Vegas is a viable alternative for a major league club, and there are other viable alternatives that I haven't turned the A's loose to even explore at this point. So
Sounds like Montreal.
Yeah, it really does. So there you go. Looking forward to the Las Vegas Athletics. So Scott, there is an event that starts up tomorrow, and the third major of the season, right?
I believe it's the last one.
Last major of the season. We played the PGA. We obviously played the Masters. So yeah, okay. So this will be the last major event, and it is, of course, the British Open.
Cheerio.
Excited about a little wake and rake there?
I'm not going to be awake for it, and I'm not going to rake, but I hope they do pretty well when they do it.
And you know where they're playing this year, of course, right?
I actually am drawing a blank on where they're playing.
Playing in Sandwich.
Ah, of course. Delicious.
Royal St. George's.
I'm more of an eggs and toast guy in the morning. But,
Are you? Is that your deal?
Mm-hmm.
I like to tell you that I can keep all of them straight. I can't. Between Carnoustie and St. Andrews, St. George. I know they're all links.
It's a pretty religious place over there. A lot of Saints.
The Saints were a lot of golfers. Played a lot of golfs. So, who do you like here, Scott?
Well, you got to look, first of all, at the favorites and talk about if there's any value on them. Of course, Rahm is the huge favorite. Am I picking Rahm to win? No, because I don't want to lay that price with Rahm at plus 750. So I'm skipping him. Looking at a long shot that I like, that I think has value on, I'm looking at Lee Westwood, who you can find somewhere around 50 to 1, a little bit lower on some other sites. But if you shop around, once again, how important it is to shop around, you can find 50 to 1 or so. Every now and then, you need to take a local guy. And Westwood, of course, is going to be representing England. He has been playing really well so far this year. I think that number is a little bit too high. I like the value on Westwood.
Okay. I'm with you as far as laying the price on Jon Rahm.
I can't do it.
Plus 750, it just doesn't do anything to get me interested. But I do like the next couple guys on that list, Scott. I do like Koepka, and I do like Jordan Spieth. Of course, Jordan Spieth has a British Open win.
Spieth was my second choice there at 18 to 1.
Sorry, man. I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
Oh, no, I started off with the 40 or 50 to 1 guy, so that's kind of on me. But
okay.
I'm trying to think if I actually like the value on Spieth because he can easily blow up at any time.
Sure.
But he does have the experience, so 18 to 1 is a pretty good price.
And Koepka is my other one, of course. And you can pick Koepka up for plus 1,600. He's the second favorite in this one. So, yeah, I'm a little chalky there.
It's kind of a tournament where if you look at just the track record, besides Spieth winning, a lot of long shots, a lot of relative, I don't want to say unknowns because I don't know if you can count Shane Lowry as an unknown, but guys who you don't immediately think of when you think of major winners. So
right.
I think some long shots might be worth a sprinkle here. I like Justin Rose at 75 to 1. He put together a pretty good performance in some of the other majors. He's also another local guy from England. Just a good golfer. I know he's had some injury issues in the past, but he's healthy now. 75 to 1 sounds a bit high to me. What do you think?
Well, I agree. I think there's value at that number. I'm also a big Rory fan. This is a tournament that he won. It's been since 2014, but it has been his best major over the last few years. But he's not playing great golf right now. But he is a guy that plays the first round very well. In all but one of his top 10 finishes at the Open, he's been in the 60s in round one. So he might be a guy that you look at as far as not only just winning the tournament, but perhaps leading after the first round and look what his matchups are that are in round one. And
Rory round one, by the way, is 31 to 1.
31 to 1 to lead?
After round one, yes.
Yeah, I like that. He's very, very solid there. So, but that's the caveat that it's only if he's going to have a good tournament, because if he stinks, he stinks in the first round. And
I expect the crapshoot just all around. So that's why I'm not talking about Rahm. That's why I'm looking at some long shots. But it's one of these tournaments where you're going to see some really nice golf and some really hideous golf. And you kind of got to, I'd say, bob and weave through some of the really potentially dangerous holes.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Of course, this is obviously a course that's going to favor the long straight hitters, right?
Yeah, which is why you can make an argument for maybe a DeChambeau, but the key word is straight.
See, that's what that's where I was headed. That's what
he hits it long, just never really straight. But yeah, that's why I'm kind of also wondering, even though it favors the long straight hitters, if you're better off taking guys who are better at scrambling. Maybe if you want to look at a Patrick Reed, for example, because you know that if he even misses some fairways, he can hit some pretty nice approach shots. But I'm going to stay away from Reed. I'm going to stick to the guys that I said. I'm going to try to go local. So I like Westwood, and I like Rose, and I also like Spieth if I'm going for a former champion.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a look and see at greens hit and regulation stats. I think that's gonna be very important, because the rough at any Open, whether the U.S. Open or the British Open, the rough is brutal. And if you've seen thick stuff over there across the pond, you know it is very unforgiving if you miss the fairway. So I think that's a reason you can take DeChambeau out of the equation for me.
Yep, I agree.
Do you think there's any value on Shane Lowry, Scott? Of course, he was the last winner of the British Open.
That's why I brought his name up. I figured we were going to talk about him. I think you got to at least talk about him as a potential long shot, because of the fact that he's 35-1. But when you're being put in the same group as a Patrick Reed, a Morikawa, even Westwood at 40-1, or even a Scotty Scheffler, something like that, I feel like Lowry now has no value because he won last year. So I feel like he would normally be priced at around 50 or 60. But because he did win in the past, it's down to around 33. No, I think this price is too low for him, because I think that even though he won, he's not exactly the greatest golfer in the world. I think he's fine, but I'd rather take other more talented golfers at the price range. You?
Yeah, I'm with you. And I'm trying to find his odds. If you don't take a spin on a long shot, I don't hate Tyrrell Hatton.
Yeah, another British guy.
Yep, he has top 6 finishes, 2 of his last 4 Opens, played well at the Scottish Open last week. So if he could, he's a guy that's kind of a head case if it doesn't go well, but if he can keep it together, I think there'll be a good chance for him to take care of business. He would he's beat England. They haven't had a golfer win the Open on English soil since. Any idea, Scott?
Hopefully not 1966.
1969. Tony Jacklin.
Yeah, they're better than the national soccer team.
Well, there you go. And I'm sure we'll be talking about the British Open as that goes forward. But now, time to bring on one of my favorites, Scott. I really like this cat. He's been a friend of the show for a long time, and we're happy to have him back. If you watch VSIN at all, you know him, you love him. He is the one, the only, Jonathan Von Tobel, a.k.a. JVT. Scott, let's bring him on and talk a little NBA basketball. Hey, everybody, and welcome back. We are joined by VSIN, the Vegas Sports and Information Network. He is the utility man. He is the go-to guy over there. He is Jonathan Von Tobel, JVT. How are you, bud? Happy NBA Day.
Yeah, thank you. I'm doing well. You know, it's kind of bittersweet. We're near the end of the road here with the NBA, so I'm excited to maybe unwind for a little bit, but the season starts again in October. So before you know it, working on the NBA guide and getting ready for next year. But it's been a fun year. It's been a fun year.
You know, it's been a grind for us, and I know it's been a grind for them. Let me ask you, at this point in the season, is fatigue a factor? The short layoff time between last season and this season, and then, you know, like the Lakers extended all the way into late, and then they started up again. Do you think fatigue is playing a factor for those guys and with these guys here?
No, you know, I don't think so. Mainly because I feel like the adrenaline, right, will kind of pick you through this. We're winning, we're competing for a championship. We are 3 wins away, 2 wins away, whichever team you are, from reaching the ultimate goal, and especially for the players that are out there, right? Chris Paul, who's been chasing this for 16 season.
Right.
Giannis, who has been slandered to a certain extent because he can't win the big one, even though he's won multiple awards like MVP and Defensive Player of the Year. So, it might be a little bit, but I think we saw that play out with some of these injuries, right, throughout the entire run. Soft tissue injuries, non-contact injuries. That's the wear and tear on the body with that compact schedule. But I think at this point, these guys are ready to go because of what's at stake.
I've learned more about knee injuries in the last 3 weeks than I have in my entire life, between learning about the meniscus tear and how that affected Embiid, and now.
Or how about the fact that you can bend your knee in that direction and still average 35 points in a finals? Like it's insane what Giannis has been doing.
How is that possible? Giannis, that knee went like that, and I don't know, man. Those guys are sometimes superhuman. It is unbelievable. So let me ask you, what did the Bucks do differently in Game 3 that they hadn't been able to do in the first 2 games? Was it as simple as coming home? Did Giannis get a little more support? What did they do differently, and can they keep it going?
So I think it's a mix, right? So if you go back to Game 1, obviously the Giannis in that game was a little bit more tentative than the Giannis in games 2 and 3, because I think it's the first game back on the knee. He even said after that game he thought he was going to be done next season. He didn't think he was coming back for a full calendar year. And so, when you think about it from that perspective, you can kind of realize, like, 20 and I think 17 is what he had in that game, somewhere in that range. There was a little hesitancy on that knee. And then Giannis in Game 2 gets insanely aggressive, right? Drops 40 points, and that's what we've seen over the last 2 games. And then it's as simple as the role players starting to execute it, because in Game 1, you got tentative Giannis, but you got good shooting from the role players, right? They shot 44.4% from 3. Guys like Chris Middleton performed very well, but when you got to Game 2, it was all Giannis, and nobody else was performing very well. And it speaks to how great Giannis was, because remember in that game, it was a 5-point game late in the fourth quarter. So they had been playing, above their skis, even without the contributions of Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton. So then you get to Game 3, and all that comes together perfectly for them, right? Drew Holiday goes 5 of 10 from 3-point range. Chris Middleton drops over 25 points, gives you 8 and I think it was 7 in terms of rebounds and assists. It was just an overall really good night from the role players. And the sneaky part about what happened in Game 3, this is a really good transition team for the Milwaukee Bucks. And one of the things that helped them out was that Phoenix, a jump shooting team for the most part, wasn't hitting their shots. And that led to rebounds, that led to runouts, that led to transition offense. And the Suns are the worst transition defense in the NBA. And the Bucks exploited that in a very large fashion. So I think all of those things came together for them perfectly for a really big win in Game 3. And I think that's the big difference you saw.
Well, now that leads to big question number 2. Is it repeatable, not only for tonight's game, but for the rest of the series? Can they put that full team effort together, or was it just a one-off?
I think it is. Look, I think 100%, or I'll go 99 because nothing's absolute. I am 99% certain that this version of Giannis, this is what you're going to see for the rest of the series. Because if you go to the 2 regular season games that they played together, Giannis scored 80 total points in those matchups, right? He has scored over 100 points in these 3 games up to this point right now. So over the course of 5 games this season, both regular and post, Giannis has 183 points against the Phoenix Suns. That is going to be something that he's going to be able to do. They don't have a matchup for him. DeAndre Ayton is not a physical matchup for him on the defensive end of the floor. Ayton was in foul trouble in Game 3, but that was because Giannis Antetokounmpo put him in that position. So I think from the Giannis perspective, that is replicable as you move on throughout the series. And I think the shooting to a certain extent is, because remember, this is a team that finished 6th in regular season shooting, 38.8% as a unit. Drew Holiday has had his inconsistencies throughout the postseason. So I wouldn't fault anybody who questions whether or not you're going to get multiple consecutive games of good Drew Holiday, right? I don't think you need 5 of 10 from Drew Holiday, but if we're talking like 37%ish, right? Give me a 3 of 7 or something in that range from beyond the arc. That is something that I think it can be perfectly replicable as the series goes along. So I wouldn't fault anyone thinking that Drew Holiday wouldn't show up on a consistent basis, given what we've seen throughout the postseason. But I think from what we have seen from Milwaukee in this entire year, I don't think it's out of this world to think that they can repeat what they did in Game 3.
So I actually just have a question on what Phoenix should do to try to adjust for Game 4. Now, of course, we all agree they can't guard Giannis. We know it. They know it. Everyone on TV watching the games knows it. So my question for you is, do you think that they're going to try to double-team Giannis and force the role players to beat them? Or do you think they're just going to let Giannis get his and try to focus on trying to maintain control over the other shooters? Because you have seen kind of conflicting ideologies in the past when one team is one superstar and a bunch of role players, and you pretty much say, well, do we let him get his and stop everyone else, or do we double team Giannis, which is dangerous because you're going to let a lot of these role players who are very good from three potentially get hot and torch you from behind the arc? What do you think they're going to do?
So I think the trouble with doubling Giannis, right, is it's kind of hard. So like if you go to game 3, for example, he was a lot more of a screener and a roller and a finisher, right? As opposed to getting the ball in a low block and working. Because if he's going to get the ball and then just kind of work in an area, it gets a little bit easier to double, right? Because he's set, he's fixed, he's got the ball. You can throw another dude at him, he's going to kick it out, and you're going to get rid of it. But when you're a guy who's setting a screen and rolling really hard to the basket, how do you double a dude who's moving all the time? How do you double a cutter? How do you double a guy who's playing off ball? And that's part of, I think, the trouble with the way Giannis operates. And the other part of it is, when Giannis is at his peak, it's when he's in transition, when he's getting up and down the floor. You can't double anybody in transition, right? Like that's kind of a troublesome thing when you go from that perspective. So I kind of figured, like when I came into the series and I wrote about this for the overall series preview, these are two teams that from an offensive standpoint really bother the other, right? And from the Giannis standpoint, the Suns have no answer for him. So from your perspective is, okay, well, let's run our offense, because if they're going to start to switch everything, that means DeAndre Ayton, when he's not in foul trouble like he was in the first half, can drop 16 points in the first quarter and a half of that game. We can find mismatches. We can operate our offense at a really high level. So I just don't know what the strategy would be, because I think the way that Giannis has played, especially in game 2, it is very hard to double him, because he's just, for lack of a better term, always moving around somewhere. He's always screening. He's always rolling. He's moving off the ball. And that is hard to double up if you're scheming against him from a defensive standpoint.
And it really looked in game 3 like he had his explosiveness back, taking the ball to the hole, where he might have been a little, I hate to use the word tentative at that level, but it looked like he just wasn't fully confident in the knee until game 3. That he had that first quick step, that burst, that just put him by Ayton and gave those guys no chance at all. I like the Bucks going forward. That's what I was going to ask you. It's currently, you got the Bucks plus 200 to win the series. Is there value there? Is that where your money's going if you had to put a bet down right now?
So I picked the Suns in 6, and I'm pretty even keeled when it comes to, a series prediction. Even if everything's in front of me, it's just say, pick the Suns at 6 and see how it plays out. So I still believe that the Suns are going to win. But I think if you're looking for value in terms of betting on Milwaukee to win this thing, it's not in the series. It's in Giannis to win MVP, right? Because if you look at when Giannis to win MVP, you can get him in the range of about plus 250, while the series price is on Milwaukee about plus 205. If Milwaukee's winning the series, he's winning MVP, right? Drew Holiday's not taking it from him. Chris Middleton's not taking it from him. So you can get a little bit more bang for your buck if you go to the Finals MVP market and play it that way, as opposed to the Bucks. And like, I have my faux series bet, I put in air quotes, is Chris Paul at plus 175 to win Finals MVP. I thought minus $2 on the Suns was a little too high, but I did think they were going to win the series. So I offset that a little bit with Chris Paul to win Finals MVP, and that's how I handled it. So these are the cool things about the Finals, is you can offset that with a different market, and Giannis to win MVP is the way to go if you want to bet on Milwaukee.
Right. We talked about that on yesterday's show, in fact, that Giannis was plus 250, and there seems to be no point at all about betting the Bucks if you're not going to bet Giannis to be the MVP.
And the cool part about that market too is, and look, we haven't seen a situation like this yet, but maybe voters are getting a little bit smarter. The door is still open for you that if this goes 7 and Giannis averages like 35, 36 and 10 or 36 and 11, that there's still a chance that even if they lose the series, the door is slightly open for you to still win that bet as well. So
you get the backdoor cover.
Right. So it gives you another avenue to potentially cover it if that's going to be the case. And the great example, of course, is LeBron James that year against the Warriors, which Andre Iguodala won it, even though he led both teams in every single statistical category. So it would be a long shot, but it's still that possibility for you.
Yeah, that was the first thing that came to my mind as well, as just that LeBron series. But the question that I have for you, since we started talking about the odds for the NBA Finals MVP, Chris Paul, of course, narrative-based minus 240, because whether or not he even goes for 2 points a game, somebody's going to vote for him because of the story and the fact that he had to overcome 16 years of struggle just to get to this point. However, the really head-scratching lines are in some of the long shots. Now, if you want to look at Booker, he's currently 12-1. And then everything else is in a different stratosphere because you have Ayton at roughly 80-1. Maybe I'm misreading something, and I know that Booker is one of the, if not the best player on the team, and he gets a lot of the recognition for it. How is Ayton 80-1 and Booker's 12-1? Because Booker has an awful game in the last game, and I know that you can't really overreact to one game in a full series, but it doesn't help, and Ayton's worst game was still a double-double. Why is he 80-1? Is that just solely because of the fact that perception-wise, people think of Ayton as being the third guy and he's never really going to be viewed in the public spotlight in that way of a true superstar, because I can't really think of a reason why he's so far away from Booker in terms of those odds.
Yeah, you and I are on the same wavelength here. Like when it came out, the Finals MVP market after Game 3, I was like, what am I looking at here, right? Because Devin Booker, to your point, and I think part of it is, everything you've mentioned. It's the fact that guards are the quarterbacks of the NBA, right? Guards get most of the publicity. Guards are ball handlers. Guards are more dynamic in terms of their ability to score. So the perception is that they're going to be more valuable. But you give me two choices. One of the guys is averaging 22 points on under 40% shooting from the floor. The other guy's averaging a double-double on 60% shooting. I think the other guy's a little bit more valuable in terms of his impact on this series. So I completely agree. Like, that was the one thing that really seemed out of whack. And even if, to your point, because it's strong, right? Like, Devin Booker has the potential to go nuclear. And part of these odds are maybe the potential that is baked into that Devin Booker could have something, under his belt as we move forward in this series. But to me, it's you can say that Booker should be slightly ahead of Ayton. That's fine. Keyword is slightly, though. For that gap to be that wide between them in the Finals MVP market, if I was dipping back in and if I was taking any shot whatsoever, it's with Ayton. Because at that price, given what he has done through these first 3 games in comparison to Devin Booker, if the Suns are going to win it, to me, he has been more valuable than Devin Booker up to this point. Booker had a great Game 2. He hit 10 free throws in Game 1. But you guys, this shooting slump stretches back, remember, to Game 2. Ever since he's broken his nose at the Western Conference Finals, he has shot under 40% from the floor. He has shot 30% from 3. This has been an extended slump for Booker. And in this series, I think Ayton has been far more valuable. So I would agree with that wholeheartedly, that if you're taking a shot, it just doesn't make sense for Ayton to be that long.
Not to mention the defensive side of the equation, which is the fact that if Ayton gets into foul trouble, or even Saric was never a good defender to begin with, but especially since your backup big man is Frank Kaminsky, who – I don't want to roast the guy who went to my college, but he looked pretty awful out there in limited action. Ayton's pretty much the only hope they have of containing Giannis, so that's also another angle to look at. But I think we both agree, even though we're talking about long shots and how Ayton might be worth it just based on price alone, if the Suns win, everyone's voting for Chris Paul anyway. So I don't really know if there's any point, but I just thought it was worth talking about.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's why I bet on Chris Paul, to win a plus 175, because, everything you talked about, part of the handicap is figuring in human emotion of these voters. And you realize that, you put it well, like, if he's going to score 2 points for the next 2 games, right, all he needs is like 10 and 10 in the closeout game, and he'll be perfectly fine to win this award because everybody wants to give it to Paul. And the other angle to that, too, is, by the way, sure, there's a lot of voters in that room who are like, hey, he should have won MVP for the regular season. We're going to give him Finals MVP, which is something that works in his favor.
Well, that just reminds me of what happened in the Lakers series to start, where I had a couple of player prop games where I took Chris Paul under in points because he couldn't shoot at all, and he got injured halfway through. And yet every time he struggled, nobody would talk about it. Instead, they'd go, well, the leadership was huge for this team, where it seems like I know the leadership is important, but the point is that they were trying to come up with other ways to showcase how he was impactful, even though every shooting metric was absolutely atrocious. And I feel like that would also translate into the NBA Finals if the Suns win, despite Chris Paul maybe shooting around, let's just say, 35% moving forward.
Yep, I completely agree. And we have the added bonus that he actually was really good in Game 1 and was rock solid in Game 2. Everybody talked about Booker in Game 2. He put up 23 and 8 on 50% shooting. So Paul's been really solid for 3 games.
Yeah, he really has. All right, in the couple minutes before we let you get out of here, JVT, we can't let a basketball guy go without talking about the Olympic team right now. They seem to be in a bit of a slump. And is this something that's going to be solved by more practice time together, getting everybody's roles defined, or is there a real problem here?
No, I think this will work itself out. Like, if you look at, like, in the first game, right, against Nigeria, they did roll out their starting 5. Kevin Durant was out there on the floor. If you watched, Kevin Durant didn't really care. He wasn't really trying. And, like, Sadiq Bey, Kelton Johnson were playing minutes in the fourth quarter because, remember, 2 members of this roster are missing right now. They're playing in the NBA Finals. Devin Booker and Chris Middleton are still active in the NBA, so they haven't been part of these friendlies up to this point. Those are 2 big impact players for the Americans. And then you look at this last game, I think there's a thought that, and almost an arrogance, right? Hey, USA basketball, we should dominate. Well, that Australian team had Patty Mills and Matisse Thybulle and Joe Ingles and Aaron Baines. Like, it's not exactly a rollover squad right there in the Australians. So I think given the fact that you have a couple of key guys missing right on this roster up to this point because they're still playing in the NBA Finals, given that they're friendlies and these guys aren't really paying that much attention and putting that much intensity into it, and I think they've had 5 practices up to this point, if I remember correctly, and one of them was a light walkthrough. Like, Yeah, this I think they'll be perfectly fine. They're still over $5 for a reason to win the gold medal. I think these are friendlies, and you're working stuff out. Once you get the full roster, and once you get to Tokyo, I think they'll be contending for that gold medal.
Well, you said 5 practices. It's 7 if you include the first 2 games because they didn't really care about those 2. But
Yeah,
the thing I have to wonder, it's actually 3 because you forgot to mention Drew Holiday, who's also there
that's
in the
right.
NBA
Yeah,
Finals. But the question that I have, since a lot of people I'm sure just want to talk about immediately fading this U.S. team, they do have a game coming up against Argentina. And according to some opening lines, the U.S. is minus 19. Why would anybody take Team USA in this game besides just praying they bounce back, which is what people thought they were going to do against Australia and then lost again? I'm assuming it's going to be either Argentina or pass, because why would I jump into this absolute car accident that's developing?
right. And like there's at this point too, we talk about motivation all the time. It's very clear that there's no motivation for the Americans to win these games, right? They're friendlies, they're working things out. You want to get bench rotations out there. You want to get guys comfortable in their roles and work on certain things. I would agree with that. Now, I think it's interesting because when you hear 19 and you realize that the Americans were laying 16 and a half against the Australians, I think the Australians will be laying a little bit more than 3.5 or so against this Argentinian team. So I do think that there might be some line value essentially in that, but just from what you have seen from this team up to this point, and again, in a friendly nature where there is no motivation to win these games, I just wouldn't feel comfortable in a situation swallowing that many points given what we've seen up to this point. In Olympic competition, right, where there's actually something on the line, maybe. But at this point right now, where they're just playing it out here in Las Vegas, I don't think there's any point in laying something like that.
Gotta let Kevin Love cook more. Gotta let Kevin Love cook.
Kevin Love, a massive part of this gold medal run for the Americans for sure.
He is Jonathan Von Tobel, everybody. JVT, what do you got going on over there at VSIN that you want to tell everybody about?
Let's see. So I'm on Follow the Money all week, so you can tune into that, 7 a.m. Eastern time, VSIN.com. Check out that. Point Spread Weekly, of course, our magazine. So you go to VSIN.com/subscribe. You get free trials as well. Check out all of the work that we do. And yeah, I'm pretty much everywhere. I don't have a set schedule on the air, so it's new every week. So just tune in. You'll find I'll be on there somewhere.
How do you like that 4 a.m. on the air, bud?
So I don't like waking up for it, but I do like getting done at 7 a.m. That's pretty cool to have the rest of the day to do whatever I need to do.
I can see that. All right, man. Thanks very much for joining us. We appreciate it as always. You can catch him on VSIN. He is the utility guy over there. He is the NBA expert. VSIN. If you're not familiar with them, you should definitely check them out. They're doing a lot of great stuff. The Point Spread Weekly. I can't stress how much that it helps your line bettors, the guys that just want to get a little bit more information and make more intelligent plays. VSiN is absolutely the place to go. So make sure you stop and check them out. JVT, thanks for joining us today, man. Good luck on all your plays for the rest of the finals. Good luck on your week here at Follow the Money, and we'll talk to you again.
Thank you.
All right, take care. All right, special thanks once again to JVT for stopping by. And if you guys didn't figure it out from our segment there where we talked about the Argentina-USA game, we did record that interview earlier in the day before the game was played. So apologies there if you guys were looking for action on that game. But he acquitted himself pretty well. He said there was value on USA. So I like what he did there. So Scott, it is time. We have talked about a lot of things here today. We talked a little baseball, a little tennis, a little basketball, a little golf. But it is now time for us to pick out our favorite play of the day, the one that you and I agreed on, that if we had to put all our chips in the middle on just one play, this is the one we would do it. Scott, once again, it is time for Bet the Farm. Scott, what do you got for us?
So, looking at the Bet the Farm play, we're going to be looking at the NBA game because we went through a whole show with a special guest, but we had our own plays that we wanted to give out on this matchup. We like a kind of a double bet. We like Giannis to record a double-double and the Bucks to win at minus 128 on FanDuel. Now, you can shop around, find most lines available at 130, but FanDuel does have 128. You're looking at Giannis's numbers, very good. Now, of course, double-double, we know the points should be there because he's Giannis. He's averaging 34-plus points per game. The rebounds you might be worried about, but you shouldn't be because he has 42 rebounds in the first 3 games of the NBA Finals. So he has been really dominant on the boards against the Suns. Meanwhile, you're looking at the Bucks to actually win the game. The home team has won every game in this series. Giannis has had a double-double in 16 of the first 18 playoff games that he's been in. And he's averaging 29.2 points per game, 12.9 rebounds per game. this postseason. The Bucks as well, very good at home. They've only lost one time at the Forum. We think the Bucks are going to even up the series, and if they're going to do so, they need Giannis to do a good job on the boards and to score at least 10 points or 40, one or the other. But in order to get to 40, got to get to 10. So we like Giannis double-double and the Bucks to win, minus 128 on FanDuel.
Yep, this is just a little sweetener to taking the Bucks on the money line, which the price of the Bucks on the money line would be minus 175. So you throw in a Giannis double-double because you know with absolute certainty if Giannis doesn't have a double-double, the Bucks aren't going to win. So you're just basically you're getting about 50 cents of value for free. And anytime there's free value in sports betting, Scott and I are going to be big fans. So we absolutely like Giannis Antetokounmpo double-double plus the Bucks to win at minus 128. And that is going to do it for our Bet the Farm play for today. And, of course, that is going to do it for our show. That's a wrap for Winners and Winers Radio. Man, Scott, it's Wednesday already. Time flies. Am I lying?
No, definitely flying.
Absolutely. So we thank you guys for stopping by. And you know what? We do this each and every day. Every weekday, we do this. So for all of our radio listeners, we appreciate you listening. For all of our viewers out there on the YouTube channel, thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and give us a quick comment. Let us know what you're playing today. And for myself, for Scott Reichel, for the whole team at Winners and Winers, we thank you guys for stopping by. Have a great day. Good luck on all your plays. Hope every one of those tickets turns into cash money when you head back to the window. You guys have a good one, and we'll see you tomorrow on Winners and Winers Radio. Take care, everybody.